Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. I caught my sister planning to ruin my wedding, so I invited her ex and stole her spotlight. I was standing barefoot on the cold tile in my parents' guest bathroom, one hand braced on the sink, the other holding my sister's phone like it might bite me. The screen was still open to a text thread titled "Bride Down," and my pulse was so loud I could hear it under the muffled music from the living room. Out there, my bridesmaids were laughing over charcuterie and sparkling water, my fiancé's aunt was telling someone about the florist, and my mother was doing that happy hosting voice she saves for company. In here, I could smell my own shampoo and the sharp mint of my sister's lip balm. My fingers were slick with sweat. The last message on the thread was from my sister, Talia. I'll accidentally knock the red on her dress right before photos. It'll be iconic. Don't tell her, obviously. I stared at the word iconic until it stopped looking like English. Then the doorknob rattled once, someone trying it, followed by my sister's voice, sweet and casual, right outside. Nadia? You okay in there? My throat tightened like a fist. I swallowed hard, slid the lock, and forced my voice into something that sounded normal. Yeah, I said. Just give me a sec. It was a Wednesday night 2 weeks before my wedding, and we were supposed to be having one of those calm, glue your bridesmaids together planning nights. Final seating chart, playlist tweaks, little favors. My parents' house was warm with dinner smells and noise, and the kind of family chaos that usually made me feel small but safe. I'd just gone to the bathroom because my heel was rubbing a blister and I needed a Band-Aid, and Talia had left her phone on the kitchen counter next to the iced coffee she'd barely touched. Her phone buzzed. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. I told myself it could be the vendor group chat or my dad or something wedding-related. I flipped it over because the vibration was making a rattling sound against the counter. The screen lit up with her message preview. Bride Down is on. I'll handle the red. I felt my stomach drop before my brain caught up. I took the phone into the bathroom like I was carrying something fragile, locked the door, and scrolled with my hand shaking so badly I kept hitting the wrong spot. I wish I could say I stopped immediately, that I respected privacy, that I was above this. I didn't. I read everything. Talia is my older sister by 3 years, and if you're the younger sister to someone like Talia, you spend your whole life learning how to take up space without being punished for it. She isn't cartoon evil. She's worse than that. She's charming. She's the person who shows up to family events with a perfect blowout and a gift bag and a story that makes everyone laugh, then turns around and says something sideways to you so quietly you can't even repeat it without sounding dramatic. She has always needed to be the event. Birthdays, graduations, funerals. If there's oxygen in the room, Talia wants it filtered through her. When I got engaged to Josh, she hugged me so tightly I thought for a second she was genuinely happy. Then she pulled back, tilted her head, and said, "Wow. Didn't think you'd do it before me." She laughed like it was a joke. Everyone else laughed too, because Talia makes discomfort look like humor and people follow her lead. Josh heard it. I saw his jaw tighten. Then he looked at me like he was asking if he should say something. I shook my head because I've been trained to smooth things over. Later, Talia texted me a list of wedding ideas that were basically a list of ways she could be visible: a dramatic bridesmaid entrance, a special maid of honor dance, a speech that will make everyone cry. I told myself she was just excited. I told myself I was being sensitive. That's the thing about growing up with someone like her. You keep questioning your own instincts until they're hoarse. Talia's ex, Ethan, had been part of our lives for nearly 5 years. They met through friends, and at first, everyone loved him because he was steady in a way Talia wasn't. He showed up on time. He remembered birthdays without needing reminders. He'd sit with my dad and actually listen instead of trying to perform. The breakup was ugly and confusing. Talia told everyone Ethan was controlling. Ethan never defended himself publicly, which made people assume silence meant guilt. I stayed neutral because I didn't want to be in the middle, but I always felt like there were missing pieces. The only time Ethan ever said anything to me about it was when he ran into me outside a cafe a few months after the split. He looked tired, like he'd lost weight. He said, quietly, "If she ever tries to make you feel crazy, you're not." Then he apologized for saying it and walked away. I remember standing there with my coffee, feeling like I'd been handed a warning I didn't know how to use. Back in the bathroom, with Talia's phone glowing in my hand, I read the thread. There were messages from two of her friends, Kira and Jess, girls I'd met once at a bar who'd looked me up and down like they were assessing whether I belonged in the room. There were voice notes I didn't play because my hands were shaking too much. There were screenshots of my wedding day schedule that I hadn't even shared with Talia directly, meaning she'd gotten them from my wedding planner or from my email when she was helping me with something. There were plans in bullet points, like a project proposal, spill red before first look, get Josh's mom worked up about prenup, accidentally misplace rings, MWH speech, bring up her college phase. There was even a message where Talia said, if she's going to be the bride, she's going to earn it. I'm not sitting there like a background extra. My vision went blurry. I wasn't crying yet. My body hadn't chosen that release, but my throat burned like I'd swallowed sand. The doorknob rattled again. Nadia? Talia's voice was still sugary. You're taking forever. I took a screenshot of the thread title and the red wine message, then another screenshot of the bullet points. My fingers were clumsy. I nearly dropped the phone. I forced myself to breathe through my nose, so I wouldn't make a sound that gave me away. Then I unlocked the door, stepped out, and handed her phone back like it was any random object. Sorry, I said. Blister. Talia's eyes flicked to the phone, then to my face. She smiled. No worries, she said, and for a split second her gaze narrowed like she was searching for a crack. Everything okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. Good, she murmured, and there was something in her voice that felt like a test. Then she walked back out to the living room, and I stood there alone with the Band-Aid still in my hand, feeling like my whole childhood had just been explained in one ugly thread. I didn't confront her that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I wanted to walk into the living room and hold her phone up and say, explain this. I wanted my parents to see her the way I was finally seeing her. But I also knew Talia. If I confronted her without a plan, she'd cry, deny, flip it into privacy violation, and I'd end up apologizing. I could already hear my mom. Why were you looking at her phone? I could already hear my dad. Sisters fight. Don't ruin the wedding over drama. Talia thrives in the fog. I needed light. So I went into my old bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and texted Josh. Can you come upstairs? Now. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Josh found me sitting there with my knees tucked up, staring at the screenshots like they were crime scene photos. He closed the door behind him softly. What happened? He asked, and his voice was careful like he already knew it was bad. I held the phone out. He read. His face changed, first confusion, then anger that made his nostrils flare. She's planning to spill red wine on you, he said flat. And misplace the rings, I whispered. And talk to your mom about a prenup. Josh sat down next to me so hard the mattress dipped. She's not doing any of that, he said, and the way he said it, so certain, made something in my chest unclench for the first time all night. We'll handle this. How? I asked. If I confront her, she'll twist it, he finished. Yeah. So we don't do it her way. That was the start of it. Not some dramatic revenge plan with fireworks. Just two tired people sitting in a childhood bedroom, making a list of risks like we were planning for a storm. We called our planner the next morning and created a password system for any vendor changes. We told the venue manager only I, Josh, or the planner could approve changes, no exceptions. We moved the rings to my friend Mara's custody with a decoy ring box in the bridal suite. We told the photographer's assistant to keep red wine away from me until after the first dance and photos. We put my cousin Layla, Who doesn't like Talia and doesn't pretend to, on Talia watch during key moments. And then Josh said, "What about Ethan?" I stared at him. Her ex. Josh nodded. He's the only person I've ever seen who makes her lose her grip. Also, he's not a random. He's friends with my cousin Sam, remember? He's been invited to our group stuff before. I hesitated because it felt petty. It felt like stepping into Talia's world of manipulation. But then I looked at the screenshots again, bride down. Iconic. Ernadat, and something cold settled in me. Talia wasn't going to stop because I asked nicely. She wasn't going to stop because it was cruel. She was going to stop if she lost control of the narrative. So, I messaged Ethan. I didn't flirt. I didn't make it dramatic.
Iuruta Isan.
This is Nadia. I know this is awkward, but I need to ask you something important.
Can we talk?
He replied within 10 minutes, sure. Are you okay? We met at a cafe near the venue, somewhere neutral. Ethan showed up in a plain black shirt, looked older than I remembered, like life had taken bites out of him. He listened while I explained, briefly, carefully, without showing him every screenshot yet. When I mentioned red wine and bride down, his mouth tightened and he looked down at his coffee. She's doing the same kind of stuff, he said quietly. You knew? I asked. He shook his head. Not this, but the pattern. He paused, then met my eyes. If you invite me, I'll come. I won't cause a scene. I won't even talk to her unless she talks to me. But I'll be there. Why? I asked because part of me still didn't trust kindness without strings. Ethan's voice softened. Because you don't deserve what she's about to do, he said. And because I wish someone had stopped her earlier. I invited him. Not as a stunt, as a mirror. As a reminder to Talia that I wasn't the only one who had started seeing through her. The wedding day arrived with bright weather and the kind of nervous energy that makes everything feel sharp. My hair was pinned so tightly my scalp hurt. My dress hung in the bridal suite like a white promise I wasn't allowed to touch with dirty hands. My mum floated around crying softly at random objects. My dad paced outside, and Talia arrived late. Of course. Sweeping in like she was the reason anyone had gathered. Her dress was pale champagne. Not white, but close enough that my stomach sank. You look, wow, she said, dragging the word out as she stared at my dress. Then, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she added, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to look nice too. I heard my friend Mara inhale sharply behind me. I felt my hands go cold, but I didn't react. I had a plan. I had people. I had proof. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let Talia bait me into becoming the dramatic sister. The ceremony was beautiful. Josh cried when he saw me. I cried because his crying undid me. For 20 minutes, Talia wasn't the center of anything, and it was like watching her hold her breath in discomfort. Then came cocktail hour. I saw her hovering near the bar, eyes tracking me, fingers curled around a glass of red wine like it was a weapon she'd rehearsed. I could feel my heart banging against my ribs. My photographer was trying to line up family photos. My dress brushed the grass. Someone's baby squealed. And Talia started walking toward me, wine in hand. Before she reached me, my cousin Layla stepped into her path like a human wall. Oh my God, Talia, Layla said loudly, fake delighted. I haven't seen you in ages. She wrapped her arms around Talia in a hug that was just a fraction too tight, and I watched, almost dizzy with relief, as the red wine sloshed dangerously, then steadied. Talia's eyes snapped over Layla's shoulder toward me, furious. That's when Ethan arrived. He didn't swagger in. He didn't make an entrance. He just walked into the courtyard in a navy suit, handed his invitation to the coordinator, and joined Josh's cousin Sam near the appetizer table. But Talia saw him immediately. I watched her face change like someone had flicked a switch. The practiced smile faltered. Her shoulders stiffened. She looked, for the first time all day, slightly off balance. She pulled free from Layla and marched toward the appetizers, wine still in hand, eyes locked on Ethan. Are you kidding me? She hissed as she got close enough. Ethan didn't flinch. "Hi, Talia," he said calmly. "You look well." Talia's laugh was sharp. "What are you doing here?" Ethan glanced briefly toward me. Just a flicker, and then back to her. "I was invited," he said. Talia's gaze whipped to me across the courtyard, and for a second, we just stared at each other. Her eyes were wide with rage, like I'd committed a betrayal of the highest order, taking control of my own event. I lifted my chin slightly. Not a smile, not a challenge, just steady. And that is where I'm going to pause the story midway like you asked, because this is the moment I realized the revenge wasn't inviting Ethan. The revenge was watching Talia lose her script. Talia is the kind of person who doesn't just want attention, she wants authority over the emotional temperature of a room. If she's happy, everyone's allowed to be happy. If she's threatened, everyone has to feel it. The bride down thread is exactly who she is when she thinks no one is watching, childish, mean, and addicted to spectacle. My parents aren't innocent either. They created the ecosystem where Talia could behave like this without consequences because it was easier to call her spirited than to call her out. Every time she hurt me and I reacted, I became the problem because I was disrupting peace, and Talia was just joking. That's how people like her get bold. Josh, honestly, was the only reason I didn't fold. He treated my fear like it mattered, and my instincts like they were valid, and that gave me enough steadiness to think strategically instead of emotionally. Ethan surprised me. I expected resentment or drama, but he showed up like an adult, which made Talia's behavior look even uglier by comparison. Also, inviting the ex wasn't about humiliating her. It was about removing her sense of control. When someone is planning sabotage, you don't win by begging them to be kind. You win by cutting off their tools. Talia's biggest tool is narrative control, making herself the star, the victim, the funny one. The second that tool slipped, she started unraveling. And watching someone unravel when you've spent your whole life unraveling quietly around them, it's ugly, but it's also deeply clarifying. Update. I posted the original version of this because I was shaking in the bathroom at my own reception, trying to calm down while my makeup melted and my brain replayed every possible disaster, like a slideshow. A lot of people asked what happened after Ethan showed up, and I needed a few days to even write it because the adrenaline crash hit me like a truck. So here's what happened. Talia didn't spill the wine. Not because she suddenly became a good person, but because she got distracted. The second she saw Ethan, her mission shifted. It stopped being ruin Nadia's wedding and became regain control of my image. She started hovering around him like a wasp, talking too loudly, laughing at nothing, trying to make him look small. She kept saying little digs disguised as jokes. Remember when you couldn't even assemble IKEA furniture? And Ethan just nodded and said calmly, I remember you being upset that I wasn't doing it your way. That calm made her twitchy. At one point, she tried to corner him near the bathrooms. I saw her grab his arm. Ethan gently removed her hand, and I saw him say something I couldn't hear. Talia's face went tight, eyes bright with angry tears. She walked away fast, shoulders rigid. 10 minutes later, she was back at the bar ordering another red wine. Meanwhile, my parents were acting like I'd committed an actual crime by inviting him. My mom pulled me aside during photos and hissed, Why would you bring him? You know how upset Talia gets. I stared at her and said, You're worried about her being upset at my wedding. Mom blinked like she didn't understand the sentence. My dad said, This was unnecessary. I asked, Was it more unnecessary than a plan to spill wine on me? He froze. I hadn't shown them the screenshots yet, but the fact I said it out loud made him flinch. He tried to laugh it off. Don't be ridiculous. I didn't laugh. I just said, okay, and walked away because I wasn't going to spend my wedding day arguing with denial. The reception started. Dinner was served. Speeches came up. This is where Talia's plan almost worked in a different way. She had insisted on giving the maid of honor speech early. She'd been pushing it for weeks, like she was afraid someone would stop her. When the DJ announced speeches, Talia stood up immediately, glass in hand, and walked to the microphone with the confidence of someone who thinks the room belongs to her. She smiled, looked around, and said, "Well, I didn't think this day would ever come," in that tone that sounds like a joke, but feels like a jab. Josh's hand tightened around mine under the table. My stomach clenched. Talia continued, "Nadia and I have always been so different. I'm more of a big personality, and she's always been quiet. But I guess even quiet girls get married." A few people chuckled uncertainly. My cheeks burned. I could feel everyone looking at me, waiting to see if I'd laugh. Then she tried to pivot into funny stories, and the stories were all humiliating. Me tripping in year 9, me getting rejected by a boy, me crying in uni because I was overwhelmed. It wasn't playful. It was a highlight reel of my vulnerability packaged as entertainment. I looked at Josh. He looked like he wanted to stand up and rip the microphone out of her hand. But before he could, Ethan stood. He didn't interrupt. He didn't shout. He just raised his hand slightly and said, calmly, "Sorry, can I say something?" The room quieted because when someone speaks calmly, people listen harder. Talia's eyes flashed. "This is a family moment." She snapped into the mic, smile frozen. Ethan smiled gently. "I know," he said. "That's why I think it matters." He turned to the room and said, "I don't want to make tonight about me, but I do want to say something about Nadia. I've known her a long time. She's one of the kindest people in this family, and she's also one of the strongest. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet means she's had to learn how to survive loudness. So maybe tonight we celebrate her without turning her into a punchline." You could have heard a fork drop. Talia's face went a shade I've never seen before, like embarrassed fury. Her mouth opened and closed. My mum looked like she'd swallowed air. My dad stared at his plate. I didn't know Ethan was going to do that. Mara later told me she'd quietly asked him to, just in case, because Mara is apparently the kind of friend who plans for emotional emergencies the way other people plan for rain. Talia laughed too loudly and said, "Okay, wow, random." Then try to salvage the speech with something about sisters forever. But the tone was broken. The room had shifted. People weren't laughing with her anymore. They were watching her. After speeches, I finally took my mum and dad aside and showed them the screenshots. My hands were shaking again, but I kept my voice low. "She planned to ruin my dress," I said. "She called it iconic. She had a whole group chat. She tried to humiliate me tonight." My mum started crying immediately, but this time it wasn't performance tears. It was shock. She kept saying, "No, no, no," like she could rewind time. My dad's face went pale, then hard. "This can't be real," he said. I swiped to the part where Talia wrote "bride down." He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised me. He walked straight toward Talia. He didn't shout. He didn't cause a scene. He leaned in, said something in her ear, and I watched Talia's posture change, stiff, defensive. She shook her head rapidly, hands fluttering like she was denying with her whole body. My dad's jaw tightened. He pointed toward the parking lot. Talia's eyes widened. She looked around at the guests, realized people were watching, and her face crumpled into tears like she'd flipped a switch. She left the reception early. My mother followed her. My dad stayed, sat back down, and, for the first time all day, looked at me like he saw me. Not as the quiet one. As his daughter. The next morning, Talia sent me a message. "I can't believe you humiliated me by inviting him. You've always been jealous."
Then she blocked me.
My mum called and asked me to be the bigger person. My dad didn't say that. My dad said, quietly, "I'm sorry." Just those 2 words. It didn't fix everything, but it was real.
Okay.
Now I'll finish the story. 2 weeks after the wedding, my parents invited Josh and me over for dinner. Talia didn't come. My mum had that puffy-eyed look like she'd been crying off and on for days. She served food like she was trying to prove she could still be normal. My dad sat at the head of the table with his hands folded, quieter than usual. Halfway through dinner, my mum said, "She says you set her up." I set my fork down. "She set herself up," I replied. Mum flinched. She's hurting." I looked at her. So was I. For years. My dad cleared his throat. Your sister is staying with Aunt Rania for now, he said. She thinks everyone is against her. Josh reached for my hand under the table, thumb rubbing my knuckle in a slow circle. I said, I don't want everyone against her. I want her accountable. Mum whispered, she's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I said, and my voice didn't rise, but it didn't soften either. I needed you on my side long before a group chat forced you to see it. Mum's eyes filled again. I didn't know, she whispered. I exhaled slowly. You didn't want to know, I said, because knowing would have meant doing something. My dad finally looked directly at me. You're right, he said, and it was like hearing a door unlock. After dinner, my dad walked me to the front door. He paused with his hand on the knob and said, quietly, I should have stopped her years ago. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah, I said. You should have. He swallowed, eyes glassy. I'm proud of you, he said, like the words were unfamiliar. Not for the drama. For protecting yourself. I didn't hug him. I wanted to, but my body wasn't ready. I just said, thank you, and stepped outside into the cool night air. Talia didn't reach out for months. When she finally did, it wasn't an apology. It was a long message about how Ethan ruined her life and how I took her moment. I read it once, then I didn't reply. Josh wanted me to respond with something sharp. Mara wanted me to block her. I did neither. I simply let her words sit in the silence they deserved. Because the truth is, I didn't steal her spotlight. I just stopped letting her shine at my expense. Talia is a master at turning cruelty into entertainment. She doesn't walk into a room and throw punches. She rearranges the furniture so you trip, then laughs like it's your fault you fell. The bride down chat wasn't a one-off bad joke. It was a blueprint of how she thinks. If she isn't the center, she'll sabotage the center and call it humor. She absolutely deserved to have her plan exposed, and honestly, she deserved to be escorted out by Dad. Not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because consequences are the only language she hasn't been allowed to ignore. My mum frustrates me in a different way. She's not malicious, but she's been complicit for years by treating Talia's behavior as just her personality and my pain as overreacting. She's the type to prioritize peace over fairness, and peace always comes at the cost of the quieter person. My dad is the biggest surprise. He enabled for too long, but when the proof was undeniable, he actually moved. He didn't do the dramatic father thing. He did the uncomfortable thing. He confronted the golden child. That matters. Josh deserves a medal for not throwing the microphone into a bush. He stayed calm, he backed me, he trusted my instincts even when I was doubting myself. And Ethan? Ethan didn't come in like some romantic savior. He came in like a mirror Talia didn't want to look at. His calmness was the perfect contrast to her chaos, and his little speech was devastating because it was true. The funniest part of the whole situation is that Talia thought she could ruin my wedding and still be the beloved star of the family, but the second she lost control of the narrative, she imploded. People like her don't fear being caught. They fear being seen clearly. And once you see someone clearly, you can't unsee it. I didn't win by humiliating her. I won by protecting the day I worked for and refusing to play the role she assigned me. If Talia ever grows up, it will start with a real apology and a willingness to stop treating other people's milestones like stages she deserves to dominate. Until then, she can keep shouting into the void. I've got a marriage, a life, and finally, a backbone she can't borrow.